Okay, our first speaker is Melanie Mark-Shadbolt from the Bioprotection Research Centre, and she'll be telling us about the Maori Biosecurity Network.
Kia ora koutou, nā mihi nui ki a koutou, no mai haere mai, ko Melanie Mark-Shadbolt tōku ingoa. I'm here to talk about Te Tira Whakamātaki, and for those of you who have heard about the network before, you'll notice the first thing is we've got a name change, and that happened last week thanks to Matua Kevin, who ensured that we had the right spelling and we weren't saying something that we didn't want to say, which I won't tell you about. You can come and ask me over a wine. So who are we? I'm going to try and talk to you about new stuff that many of you haven't heard, because Phil here always asks me, have we done anything? And my response is, you've done heaps, Phil.
Thanks, Mel.
And I'm going to tell you about some of the things that we've done. So who are we? Well, of course, we are a bunch of riffraff. We're a group of Māori academics, kaitiaki, people who work in government policy, consultants, but everyone who has an interest in biosecurity in the wider sense that biosecurity is for Māori. And we have an interim executive, which you can see up there, that was established earlier this year. And most of the people are heavily involved in biosecurity and have been for some time. Te Tira Whakamātaki means the watchful or vigilant ones, so that basically means that we're watching all of you now, keeping an eye on what you're doing. What are we up to? We have just finished consulting with our whānau about our legal structure and the kawa, or the culture of our network, and that's under development. We hope within the next month or two we will have a legal structure, that we will be an organisation in its own right. And our purpose is basically threefold: to have a voice for Māori in the biosecurity system. That's a voice, not the voice. We are not the voice of all Māori, we are a voice. But to guard also the biosecurity processes, to make sure that that voice is heard within the system. And thirdly, to provide biosecurity research and solutions for the system. So those are solutions that come from Māori and take into account Māori perspectives. We began in 2014 as an idea, and in 2015 we managed to secure some funding. We had wānanga all around the country in 2016. We also spoke internationally in 2016. We've had huge amounts of interest for a network that doesn't actually legally exist yet. And this year is no different. We have position statements, research, more conferences, and plenty of work and incursions to deal with. And I'm going to give you a quick rundown of some of that work. So, like I said, hui and wānanga. 2016, we went out to the regions. We asked our whānau what biosecurity meant for them. We got all the feedback on those questions that you can see up there and read for yourself. I'm sure you're intelligent people and can read. We got the feedback from those questions, and that helped us formulate what the network would look like. And it also helped us formulate what research our whānau wanted to be involved in, so that we could start then shoulder tapping people and looking for areas of interest that we could get inroads into that would help our big picture, which I'll talk about in a minute. This year we're doing similar stuff, but a bit more specific. So we had a wānanga a week or 2 weeks ago, where we looked at myrtle rust, brown marmorated stink bug and UAVs specifically. And we hope that, well, the plan is to go regionally and to talk about specific incursions or technologies that are of interest to that region. And again, it's about making sure that we obtain a voice, not the voice, but a voice. We have had huge amounts of interest, as I said. From 2015 onwards, we have spent more time probably talking to groups and to councils and the like than we have done doing our research and meeting with our whānau. And we hope to flip that and to get back to our grassroots, which was always the intention. But we have huge amounts of interest offshore as well. And that's interesting to us because offshore they can see the value of an Indigenous biosecurity network. And not only is it Indigenous people who are interested, but of interest to us are people like Kew Gardens who say to us, for example, you know, last year we did an expedition to Australia. And we thought we had consulted with Aborigines, but we hadn't. And then we got driven out of the community and we had, you know, letters in the papers about how bad we were, and that doesn't look good for the Queen, does it? Because that's ultimately who they represent. And so other groups are also starting to see the benefits of working with Indigenous people in the biosecurity space. And so internationally and nationally, we've been kept very, very busy. On top of that, we've been fortunate enough to be made part of the Biosecurity 2025 implementation response and or the drafting of the strategy. So the Māori focus group that helped draft up that strategy included members from the network. In fact, almost all 9 members were network members, but 3 of them are on our executive now. We also had Tipani, who was facilitating that, who also facilitates our hui. Glenys Payne was the peer reviewer for Biosecurity 2025, and she's also on the implementation steering group, and she's also on our network executive, and we hope that next week we can announce that is she here? Can we announce that she's the chair, hopefully next week, if we can bully her into it, which is always the plan. And we also have members who are attending the strategic direction implementation working groups. So the network is ensuring that it can help the system develop in a way that provides a voice for Māori, as well as working with Māori on the ground. This year we've released information and position papers, one on myrtle rust when it was first found on Roa Island, and another on the brown murmuray stink bug. The theory behind position papers and information papers for us is that as Māori academics or Māori technicians in the biosecurity space, we should be able to take the information, digest it and regurgitate it in a manner that is useful for our families and our communities. The other intent behind that is, for example, in the has-no space, quite often when EPA go out to consult on the importation of a new organism, they will get responses back from the same 5 to 10 Māori groups. That's the 5 to 10 Māori groups who have resourcing to be able to respond. They have people and money to understand what's going on. Our goal is to make sure that more whānau can respond to incidences like that because they have access to our information and our position statements. We're not taking a side. If you've read the brown murmuray stink bug one that's on our Facebook page, we don't take a side. We simply say this is where the science is and this is what we're going to keep an eye on. Come to us if you want more information. We have a large amount of research projects underway. This is a list of some of them. The reason I put up the disaster risk reduction stuff, which I'm involved in personally, is because the modelling that we use for emergency responses, we are starting to incorporate into our biosecurity responses as well. But of more interest to us is this really chaotic picture that Amanda and I probably drafted up in the wee hours of the morning. Because what we wanted to highlight is the fact that people see a lot of work going on in the network, and they think that it's quite ad hoc and it's quite, piecemeal and bitsy. But for us in the network, we can see the wider jigsaw puzzle. We can see the whole picture, and what people outside of the network see is just a little piece of it. They see maybe a Marsden ongoing or a Ngāpai project. They all do combine to make a puzzle that we're trying to formulate to answer the big questions for us, which is what do Māori want in the biosecurity space? And it's across the horizon, from Amanda's Fast Start Marsden through to the work that Albie's drafting up with the B3 collaboration. So I think we have about 15 projects that the network is either named in. Most of them I think we know we were named in, probably 1 or 2 we found out afterwards. But 15 or so projects that effectively a group of 10 people are trying to manage. The goals of all that research is basically to understand what Māori think about biosecurity, but about the technologies as well, to understand, and again, we don't like the social licence to operate word, as was mentioned this morning, but we do like the idea of social and cultural acceptability. What is acceptable to Māori? What are the right messages that Māori need to hear before we respond to an incursion, before we spray a city, so that we don't get protests like this over our biosecurity responses, because to be honest, that's what we will get. So we have a myrtle rust incursion at the moment. Have Māori been consulted effectively? Some in this room, standing at the back, would probably argue no, that their whānau up north haven't heard. Others will say, well, it's an incursion, it's an emergency response, we don't have time to respond. What I do know is that if it's not done effectively, there are a bunch of kaumātua who have already met in Northland who have said they will block access to their land. So those 100 dock workers may turn up to check those sites of significance or those traps or whatever areas of surveillance they're looking for, and they may find our kaumātua standing there saying you do not have access to this property. And that will only increase. We had at our last wānanga an iwi representative turn up who is about to receive, I think, 2 national parks and a mountain in their settlement. They said the first thing they're going to do is block docks access, they're going to remove 1080, and then they're going to come to the network to look for solutions to keep predators out of their rohi. If Māori aren't consulted properly, then that could be a huge disaster for the rest of the country, couldn't it? So our goal for our research is to make sure Māori have a voice and that that voice is heard. We have a lot of things coming up. I know I'm running out of time probably. We have a lot of things coming up, including looking for money and sponsors. So again, if there's anyone out there that wants to sponsor our network, then come see Amanda or I or any of the other Māori out there wearing matching shirts and have a conversation with us. We have some MOUs that we're looking at signing, in particular with seed banks, and again probably with our biggest supporter so far, the Bioprotection Centre and Travis, who lets Amanda and I do this in our offices, Hideaway, and also the Challenge, who has given us plenty of time and support. We have some big international events coming up, and the one that's at the bottom of the slide I want to talk about. So Kew Gardens and the network have been organising a session as part of the Island Arc Symposium in Fiji, and we have been planning this for quite some time now, and it is of huge importance given the recent incursion. So we are hoping to get a bunch of Indigenous people from all around the Pacific to Fiji to look at Mutesi's plant health in the Pacific region, to also look at seed banking and to do some workshops on how to do that properly. And we have interest from our whanaunga in Tahiti and Hawaii and New Caledonia, and we want to get our Māori kaitiaki over there as well. But of course, anyone who's interested in Mutesi's plant health is welcome to come. So have a look on the Island Arc Symposium website, and you're more than welcome to join us there. I think I'm going to leave it at that, even though I do have some other slides in case you have questions. But again, we need to thank our funders and our sponsors. And any questions?
Thank you very much. Questions for Mel?
Being shy.
Barney's down there. Unless he's yawning.
Just yell. The action is... Yeah. Well, as Kim said this morning, she outlined the fact that we have a whole history of disenfranchised and, we have this anger anyway. So you're completely right. If we don't consult right from the beginning, the default mechanism for Māori is to go away, to get off our land. We don't want to talk with you. And that's more to do with the relationship and the fact that you haven't had the conversation with us. So the network was set up in peacetime to deal with those conversations before, obviously, incursions in wartime. If Māori equally want to protect our taonga species, we want to protect our native plants and our biodiversity. So it's not that our whānau up north will block access because they don't care about protecting the Pahurakawa and the Mānuka, but they will block access because they don't trust the agencies that are coming in to do what they say they're going to do. So having early conversations is part of our goal and part of everyone's goal, I think, in the biosecurity system. Amanda will correct me if I'm wrong.
In terms of the myrtle rust incursion now, to what extent has your network been consulted? In terms of the current myrtle rust incursion, I wonder to what extent your network's been consulted?
Okay, so when Royal Island hit, Veronica was fantastic and rung the network and informed us. So we immediately got information out to our wider network and our database, who have been very active on the ground. I mean, there's probably some people at the back of the room who are itching to answer this question from our network, who are running around like, we have had ups and downs. And I guess that this is an interesting point. We are not a mandated voice. We don't represent iwi and we don't represent mana whenua. But what we are is a group of technicians or people with technical skills in this space that want to help our whānau. So we've had some generic updates, probably like a lot of other stakeholders. and then we have whānau updates. So I think before the incursion was announced, we had been told probably 5 hours beforehand from whānau that they knew that this had happened, and they were waiting to see what the response to the network would be. So again, that created some anger because our whānau knew 5 hours before the network had been officially told and or before public had been made aware. Do we expect to be at the table every time? No, we don't expect to be at the table. But what we do expect is that our skills are utilised in the best way for Māori. I just want to touch on one other thing while I've got time. My father popped in before to visit and was listening to some of the kōrero around, a wee bit around who owns genetic data, but also around how do we consult with Māori. And one of the interesting things he said is iwi leaders have summoned us. So that's after Myrtle Rust, we've been summoned to go meet with iwi leaders, and Te Ururoa has been on the phone and asking for updates regularly. So one of the things that he said as a politician was, well, it'll be interesting when we take a class action as Māori iwi leaders against someone for a biosecurity incursion and or for using our genetic data in a way that they shouldn't have. So I think it's getting to the stage where, especially after this incursion and from what our whanaunga in Northland are telling us, that we will be having hard conversations at the iwi leaders level about how we expect to be consulted and what we do if we're not consulted.
Thank you very much, Mel.